And now we have Ari Melber on to talk about columnists that Newsweek is using without properly attributing where he's from. And we'll tell you why that's so important in a second. Ari Melber of The Nation magazine, welcome back to the Young Turks.
Thank you.
It's good to have you, man. All right, so tell us what this article is, who wrote it. Give us the background first.
Well, I was flipping through Newsweek in print, if you can believe that. And after all the columns in the front, they have these longer articles in the middle, and there was one that just had all of these crazy arguments saying that Barack Obama could have won a lot more Republican votes for the stimulus if he had only included tax cuts, which is weird because he did include $280 billion in tax cuts in the stimulus, and that Obama fatigue is sweeping the country, and just a lot of other stuff that sounded more like attacks than reporting. It was a long piece. And the byline was for Yuval Levine, who it said was an editor at a magazine and a fellow at a public policy center. And I did a very minor amount of digging, nothing special, and found out he also was a former senior White House aide to George W. Bush. And Newsweek has got him covering and analyzing the Obama era and telling us a couple of things about him, but not really the main thing. And I asked Newsweek why that is, and they said that's because all their readers already know Yuval Levine's background. So that was the crux of my piece, basically saying that's crazy, and Newsweek owes obviously a better explanation because that makes no sense, but also more transparency for their readers.
Ari, I don't know why you question that explanation. I was just talking to someone the other day about Yuval Levine, and they're like, oh, come on, who doesn't know his background? Who the hell is Yuval Levine? No one knows who he is. I mean, that's a comical explanation by Newsweek.
Yeah, and as a writer, it's a funny thing because sometimes you're in these situations and you have to figure out whether you want to just completely say that they appear to be lying, right? I don't think that an educated, knowledgeable person who works for a news magazine really would have any way to believe that Yuval Levine's a household name. So when they say it is, it sounds like a lie. I didn't write that, though, to be fair, in my journalism in writing it up. I just asked the questions to suggest that this was crazy.
Okay, so let's go to the larger issue here. How are they, if you don't know what's going on and you just come to this article in the middle of Newsweek, are you seeing that as an article or a column? Is it even clear that it's an editorial or not?
It's not clear. In their response, they said our readers can tell that this is an argued essay and not an article. I encourage anyone to go pick up a copy of Newsweek. I couldn't tell, and I'd spend too much time on this stuff. It's not labeled that way. And this, in the bigger picture, as you're saying, Cenk, is coming at a time when trust in the news media is at a 20-year low in this country, when we have outlets like Fox News who are free to give their opinion. I'm all for that. I'll always defend their right to speak. But who have built an entire business model around pretending that they're objective while acting as a political opinion and political operation, most famously recently attacked by the White House for it, finally. So it comes at a time when I do think readers and viewers have a lot of questions about the media, and it's really not helpful when, again, why does it matter? Newsweek has over 1 million readers. It's a top magazine, and their people appear all over television. They have influence, and I don't think in this instance they're wielding it responsibly.
So how should they handle it, Ari? When we open up a magazine or a newspaper now, should things be clearly labeled article or editorial? And if it's an editorial, should we always know where he's from, et cetera, to get a sense of his perspective?
Yes. I think opinion and news should be distinguished clearly in the section. And I think people in these important roles who increasingly have conflicts of interest should make every best effort to disclose them. The irony here being that Mr. Levine did have 2 pieces of information under his name, that he was an editor at a different magazine and that he was at a policy center. That doesn't tell us anything. It doesn't tell us as much as knowing that he worked in the Bush White House. Then when he tells us about Obama fatigue, we can factor that in. I'm all for him being in the conversation. As I wrote, it makes it more interesting that the guy served in the White House. I like listening to people who've been in the White House, even if I disagree with them. They have a view. It's very odd that both he and Newsweek wanted to hide that. So to your question, those things should be up front.
So, let's put aside Yuval for a second here, because I'm with you. I think that if it's an editorial, it's a perfectly fine editorial. I mean, I don't think his facts are right, but he's a conservative, so I've come to expect that. But as long as it's clearly labeled editorial, so what? But, as we were talking, I'm thinking, is there a middle ground between editorial and article? Is there analysis? Is that a different breed? And how should a magazine like Newsweek handle something that's analysis, where you have to say, okay, this is right and this is wrong? You see what I'm saying by that? It's a little middle ground.
Yeah, I think that middle ground for me depends on whether it is advocacy or attempted objective work. It might be objective and analytical and saying the stimulus is working or not, and here are arguments why. But that's distinct from someone who took a stance against the stimulus or for it and now is making their case again. In war coverage, we had a lot of people who came out for the Iraq War and then would go around analyzing it, and we didn't really get a heads up or reminder that they're invested in defending the war, which is why a lot of the media was slow to deal with the problems in Iraq and the problems in finding WMD. They were invested in a narrative. And so I think anyone who ever wrote, this is not how we do it today, but we could, anyone who ever really endorsed a policy, that could be indicated. I think it's relevant.
Yeah, and, the more we talk about it, on the TV side, I've always been very clear on it. Of course, Fox News should label themselves a Fox Opinion, and we have zero problems with it. And, you mentioned that earlier, and I think it's easy to say Keith Olbermann does an opinion show, and you can say opinion/analysis, however you want to call it. So do we, right? But that MSNBC's news side is still news. They're not propaganda for the Democrats or anything along those lines, as Fox is. But in magazines and in print, I'm not sure that I'd given it enough thought. Now I'm beginning to think, as we talk it through, that it should be just the facts, ma'am, analysis, and editorial, that there's a spectrum there, and that once you clearly label which section it goes in, then I don't have any problem at all.
Yeah, and I think readers just want to know where people are coming from. And there's a lot of skepticism because, again, the conflicts of interest are worse. So you have reporters who play different roles. You have reporters who are invited on television ostensibly to give what you called analysis, but then are often pressed to take positions. And that might happen, and the key then is to have some record for that. And there are actually some academic studies that look at how pundits and people in the prediction business generally are very bad and have very low accountability, because the things that get you published and invited on shows don't correlate much with being right. I mean, Paul Krugman's written, many columns complaining about that on the both economic and foreign policy front. We didn't get a new class of war pundits to help us through, say, the Afghanistan buildup or these other issues. It's the same class just about of pundits and all of their endorsements of these past failed policies. Now, that's a kind of a bigger picture thing because it's not just labeling, but I do think that more disclosures help as a general rule.
Yeah, my final thought on this is that, sometimes I'll see Associated Press stories that drive me crazy because of the assumptions that they make in there. But if they label an analysis, then I say, okay, look, I'm going to break this apart as to why I think it's wrong, but at least they called it analysis, and I don't have as much of a problem with it. So I really, truth in labeling is so important, I think, for all of the media. So I'm really glad you wrote the article and came on to talk about it, Ari. Ari Melber from The Nation. Thanks for joining us.
I'm glad we could do this analysis, man.
There you go. Perfect. All right. Thanks, Ari. Okay.
If you like this clip, you'll love the whole show. You can watch that at theyoungturks.com.